Peace and blessings. This is Chi Vital, aka King Chi, and I am back with yet another tool for your toolkit. I want to connect with you all and talk about self reflection and your preparedness for what you deem is going to be war. So, I want us to also acknowledge Oshun, yay yay, my Fedefun Oshun, for today is her day in the Ifa tradition. So, shouts out to you. You the real MVP. Especially when we're going to look at some of the qualities of war. Hi, Akambakani. What's going on? Nice to see you. Peace, Kita. I'm going to switch out this other background music as you all tune in. Get your notebooks ready because this information can be very useful for you, especially during this week. This energy is really heightened. The conversations are very much about Aries and Mars energy and Pluto and yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into the astrological aspects, right? I am going to get into some strategy though, as far as how we relate to one another in our experiences. So make sure you have your notebooks ready, and I'll give you just a moment to do that. When you're ready, just press 1 in the chat, and I shall continue. 1 second here. Boom. I wanted to just make sure that we don't have any interruptions as well. Boom. Boom shakalaka. This way I can actually tune in and chat with you all too. Shouts out to everyone in the chat. Let me see. Shout out to Caitlin Gardner. Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Vishnus. Hey, Mia. All right. All right. The chat is being weird. Is everyone able to see the chat? Because I see it on my end. Okay, you can see me. You can see in here. All right. Just my chair a little bit. All right, family. So I'm going to begin this with a quote from Sun Tzu. Okay? If, some of the words might be off. If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. And finally, if you don't know yourself and you don't know the enemy, you're going to succumb to defeat in every battle. There's 3 different ways to go about life. And obviously, the best way is to make sure that you not only know yourself, but you also spend some time getting to know your enemies. Now, I know the word enemies is like a flag word. People tend to go very outwardly when it comes to that. And the reality is that, yes, this world is not just made up of imaginary enemies. There are real enemies that do not want you to do well, and whether they know it or not. And there are enemies inside of you, whether you know it or not, which is why I always want to encourage my students, my friends, my loved ones, that when they pray for success, when they pray for victory over their enemies, that they include the ones that are seen and unseen, that are internal and external. Let's cover all of our bases. Ashe? All right. So the question for today was, are you ready for war or victory? You want to lead the conversation with yourself as you reflect on what your outcome is going to be. Are you preparing yourself so that you are leading your actions from a defensive way or viewpoint? Or are you preparing yourself so that you are not only prepared to defend yourself, but you understand what's going to be necessary for victory? So make sure you have those two things distinctively clear and separated. Because some of the things that you are going to discover about yourself through true reflection are going to lead you to a clearer answer of what is going to lead to victory. I don't want to give you the answer just yet. I do want to take you first through what are some of the things in a listed form that you should know before you absolutely answer the question. And to be real with you, the only way you're going to be able to answer this question is if you look at these attributes of yourself. Okay? So the first thing in self-reflection, when we're going a little deeper and we're asking ourselves the question if I am ready for war or I am ready for victory. Okay? Is one, you want to know your own capabilities. Write that down. You want to know your own capabilities. Once you identify what your capabilities are, then you're in a better position to identify what your skills are, what your weaknesses are, what you're willing to give up, and what you're ready to fight for. So that's the second part, okay? The first part is an overall understanding of what your capabilities are, okay? Those things are shining. They're the first things you would go towards in the event that any challenges were coming your way, either against your character or your position at a place of business, within a relationship, with your mate or with your children and communication. What are your capabilities? What do you lean on immediately? Because you know you are really efficient in that area. The second part is a little broader. It's a little more in detail, where now you're identifying your skills, your weaknesses, and I'll tell you something about your weaknesses, right? And how you identify, and they'll just reveal another tool for you, okay? Your values. Your values and your priorities. I kind of skipped ahead. So whatever you wrote there, it's really just the four things: your skills, your weaknesses, your values, and your priorities. All right? Then you can see how the third part comes in, where you know for sure what you're willing to give up and then what you're willing to fight for. And what you're willing to fight for is going to be something that's worth fighting for. And that worth is identified by you when you decide what your values are and what your priorities are. So far, you all are following me? All right. One key to a good life is that you want to minimize wasting energy. Energy is life, and you really don't want to waste it on things that are not going to add to what is valuable to you and what is a priority for you to enjoy your life or the life that you're providing for those who are depending on you. Okay? So in order to eliminate the opportunity for unproductive battle, unproductive fights, unproductive arguments, you want to be very clear about what is valuable to you and where your priorities lie. Okay? This is where we get into reflecting on ourselves. This is the self-knowledge is key. Self-knowledge, know thyself, is very important. One of the tricks that occur, or one of the, I want to say the more contradictory energies that occur in your pursuit in knowledge of self, are that you have two energies that don't necessarily go in the same way. Okay? The two energies at play are going to be your curiosity, right? You're going to begin this journey with inquiry. And this journey is always going on. So every time you sit to reflect, you are still on the journey of self-inquiry. And I believe that this is a lifelong journey. Along the way, you will know yourself, you know your foundation of who you are. No one can knock you off of that. But as you grow and you experience life, you pick up things, you put things down. That's just a part of really being alive. Not just living, not just surviving, not just blah, but being alive and integrated into life itself. Okay? So the two energies that are present, one begins with curiosity, okay? The other, because of curiosity, is going to be your protective nature. And one will realize that you can't fully be curious and protective at the same time. But you need both. All right? You need both. The curiosity and the blessings of that is that it allows you to be vulnerable enough to live on the cutting edge of the unknown, outside of your comfort zone, and figuring things out where you're going to utilize a skill that you don't generally use because you have not been in that situation before. And the only time we can truly say we've learned something is if we're in a situation where we cannot really guess or predict what is going to happen. That's the only time we biologically create new pathways in the brain, new ways to think about things in life, period. So if you are in a state of already being able to predict and know what's going to happen in your environment, know that you are setting yourself up for failure if battle, war ever came to your door, because you're living mostly and probably absolutely in the box of protectiveness and defensiveness, whether you know it or not. And most times you won't know that you're living in that space of protectiveness or defensiveness because you're in a space of comfort. You're in a space of where you can predict all things. So you're not alert or aware to any looming danger. And so you don't recognize that you're being defensive. When we realize that we're being defensive, if we were just to take a moment and see that defensiveness is also resistance, we can lean into curiosity to mindfully allow ourselves to become vulnerable enough to look at what may be presenting itself as a weakness of ours. Because in the face of a threat, you recognize that you may have a gap somewhere. Is it true when you feel threatened at all that you feel like you have a gap or an insecurity or a weakness showing up? So one of the gifts when we feel that resistance, when we recognize that we feel threatened, is that an enemy, right? We say our enemies are what are threatening us, what are threatening our existence, what are threatening our comfort. Okay, what a really good enemy is going to show you are your hidden talents, your hidden skills, your hidden feelings, your hidden thoughts, your hidden manifestations, your hidden power, all of those things that you're not always aware of because you have no use for them if you're not put up against some kind of threat or resistance. So we want to be thankful that life is not so bland that it's always comfortable. And so therefore we have a space to embrace some of that discomfort so that we can grow, so that we can become more powerful, so that we can truly get to know who we are. And from this space, you take on the courageous stance to look at yourself and recognize where you have weaknesses, where you may have been absolutely just stupid. We don't want to say these things to ourselves, but there's a place for that where you look in the mirror and you go, oh, girl, or man, that was dumb. I really was like, no, that was dumb. And we can look at our children sometimes with more ease and say, oh my God, that didn't make any sense, right? We can look at our mates and get angry and be like, you're so stupid, right? We can look at our homies and go, ah, duh, come on, like, you stupid or what, right? But to look in the mirror and to just say out loud and recognize, okay, so here's the scenario. And wow, I had a real blind spot. And for those of you who want to know more about these blind spots, you're lucky if you belong to Patreon, because I'm going to go more into these blind spots and how to close those gaps more regularly without you getting stuck in a box. Note to self, okay? So what we have is that now we recognize I have an opportunity to grow. Not just grow in a space of I'm ready for war, because one, we just identified you're not ready for war if you have not thoroughly looked at what is creating resistance. Sometimes the resistance that we feel is because things are not going our way. All right? And if we take a moment to be honest and look at some of the things that we want and we're like, it's not going our way. And if you've been on this journey long enough, you think back to when I've gotten into a position where there's resistance. I've been asked to either change my perspective so I can receive the blessing that is there for me, which may be a switch in direction. You know, you're on one track and divinity opens up the other way and your train goes in another direction. You're like, I've been studying to be a doctor and this road opened up for me to be an athlete. Or I've been an artist this whole time in painting and the road opened up for me to start singing. And the whole time, like, I thought that was just a thing I would do in the shower forever. Whatever it may be, you may be looking for a new home in a certain location, and the whole time you were prepared to go do that, there was all these places available to you. And for the life of you, you can't get a space in that location. If you've experienced that in the past and then a year later find out that the space that you were going to move into would have like definitely not worked out for you where your life goes. And this is why we need to pay attention to when there's resistance. Because sometimes the person that doesn't want to hang out with you anymore, or the job that wants to let you go, or the relationship that wants to be released, or some of us experience resistance in a relationship that wants to go to the next level. Let's talk about that. sometimes there's an individual that's asking you to commit further than you were planning on. And resistance shows up doesn't mean that it's necessarily an enemy to destroy you. This enemy to what you believe was supposed to be the way is now here for you to take a moment to reflect and understand how are you going to engage it, and if it's worth it. Is it worth it? Are you going to get stuck in a space of trying to figure out and change the resistance, or are you going to stand in your power, look at what is brand new to you, give yourself enough room to get close enough to the resistance to understand it a little more? Then you can look from a broader view, as opposed to this box of reality that you've created your safety in, and say, resistance, resistance, resistance. I cannot go any further. Resistance, resistance. Okay? Don't hide. Don't run away. Don't disconnect. Because in doing so, you're not going to grow, you're not going to learn, and you're going to have to keep going over and over and over and over again. Okay? But once you identify this resistance through one of the very annoying questions our children ask us, which is, what if? What if? When you get stuck, or you feel resistance, or you think there's an enemy, okay? You just think there's an enemy. Ask yourself, what if? It's easier to say, hypotheticals, they don't make sense. Why should I prepare myself for something that I don't know is going to happen? But when we train, all of us who become masters or professionals in some degree in any area of life, we prepare for what is not necessarily the reality, but we prepare for what ifs. That's what we are. We are studying what if scenarios. Everything is what if. So if we look at what if, we can say to ourselves, okay, what if this profession lets me go? Then you can realize, do I have other skills to lean back on? Do I have the finances to cover me while I go through a period of grieving some of that security? Do I have the knowledge to fight that being let go of, because it may not be legal? Do I have knowledge of law and employment? The what ifs allow you to explore where your blind spots may be. All right? So what I want you to do is use the what if to place yourself, at least psychologically, at the edge where you now realize what tools are going to be necessary for you to adapt. Because as human beings, we are really, really awesome at adapting unless we're out of balance mentally. And as adults, a lot of us have a lot of imbalance and disorders when it comes to our mental health. But some of you don't even recognize it about yourselves because you're not willing to look at your resistance to adapting. When you cling to what is, even when what is wants to change consistently and it keeps showing up that way, that's out of line, that's out of order. Because the only constant is change. So if you feel disturbed to a space of depression, anxiety, stagnance, or you just lose all of your wind for life because change is occurring, then you want to realize that one of the blind spots is that you're having a really hard time embracing what is natural to life and growing. That way you can explore other avenues that will help you move along. Is all of this making sense? I hope it's helpful to you all, because there's so much energy going on. And when we talk about enemies, we also are, enemies is a strong word, but we're also considering things that have been done to us in reality. Like I said, there are actually people who don't like us. And, it can't be liked by everyone. Fine. And then there are people who don't like us, and they will go out of their way to express how much they do not like who you are. They do not want to see you do well. And that is just what they're on, right? And sometimes you're in a position where you feel like, I'm gonna lash out. I'm ready for war because I'm gonna lash out. Well, if you're going to lash out, then you need to know if you're prepared. Do you truly know your enemy before you do that? And if it's worth it. Don't go to battle if it's not worth it. Because we don't waste energy. Wasting energy. No. Energy is too precious. Okay? So I hope this was beneficial to you all. Please let me know how you feel in the comments. I want to check you out too. I see Angie says, yes, it's making so much sense. Kiera, identifying the key components, even in my environment. Yes. Evaluate with this new and more chaotic energy. So for those of you who are experiencing some of these, there's a lot of feelings. There's a lot of feelings, man. The emotions are coming up. Emotions are definitely coming up. And I implore you to feel them. Feel all of them. 1 minute you may be crying like this hurts, or you may be feeling you're crying because you feel this level of bliss and gratitude for the fact that like you missed being hit by a missile. Where you were like fighting, like, I just gotta hold on. I just gotta stay in this same space. And then like spirit just moved you like, no, move on. Like this is where you need to go next. And you're like, oh, dang, like I missed that one. That one missed me. I'm really grateful because I really kicked my own behind trying to figure out why I couldn't get it right. Why I couldn't stay. Why this couldn't work the way I wanted it to work. And so that's all good too. But while you're doing this and you're getting really aware and all that good stuff, be mindful that all scenarios, all occasions where you're either under attack or you're feeling like you need to go to war, sometimes that war can be fought with compassion for yourself, where you see it's not worthy of your energy and you detour. All right? And other times, people who feel like they can come at you any kind of way, that you set it up in such a way that you're not mimicking or repeating the behavior that was done to you, but that you can step above that and recreate a scenario where you stop it in its tracks, period. Okay? Because to have to repeat that behavior in order for what you think you're teaching them a lesson, like you did this to me, so I'm gonna do this to you. Guess what? Boo boo. That's a loss. That's a loss. All right? Most times when we get a chance to so-called like serve karma back to someone, it's not directly to the person that did whatever. You don't need to repeat the behavior. And like, if I can make it really, really clear, okay, if someone violates you physically, doing that to someone else or doing that particular thing to that person doesn't stop it, okay? There's real ways to end cycles. Clip it. Not telling you to be a pushover. Definitely not telling you that. Just telling you that be strategic in how you set yourself up for victory and not just wasted energy warring for the wrong cause. All right? Peace, love, and bliss on your life journeys. I love seeing y'all here, and I will definitely be dropping a link on Patreon for my Qi Yang. All right.